Look at these boxers, and in order for them to whack the hell out of each other, they're going to need something called energy. And that's why we're talking about the mitochondria in this video. So let's start off by looking here at Mike Tyson. Maybe you don't know him, but he's a world famous boxer. And he's pretty muscular. So let's zoom into his arm here, okay? And we're going to see what it's made of. So if we zoom into his arm, we see what we pretty much see on every living thing. We zoom in far enough, what do we see? We see cells, man. We see cells. Cells is the smallest living thing we are made of. We're made up of billions of them, right? And if they all work well together, we work well together, okay? So let's get this cell up here. By the way, we're opening here the Chamber of Secrets. So here we have our lovely cell. It's beautiful. Now, basically, what part of our cells makes the energy? What part makes sure that our cells have enough energy to survive? Enough energy to whack the hell out of this guy here? This part is called the mitochondria. It is one of the key organelles. And this organelle is going to make all the ATP necessary for you to be able to move, speak, to survive, anything crucial like that. So let's zoom in a bit further and look at what it really looks like, okay? Because right here we can't see anything. Okay, let's zoom in a bit more. Look at this one specifically. And here we got our mitochondria. Okay, it's right now. So now, here we have our mitochondria. And we're going to slice it open because we want to see what's going on the inside, right? On the inside. So we slice it open and we look, oh, well, what's going on there on the inside of this mitochondria? Well, it's a bit small, I think, so I'm going to make it even bigger and we're going to look at it on the next page here, okay? Here it is, really, really humongous. We open it up, slice it open. What's going on here? Let's label some structures. So we can see this outer membrane here, this membrane surrounding kind of serving as the wall, okay? It's the wall. It's making sure everything inside is safe and sound, okay? We call this outer membrane. Guess what? Guess what? We call it the outer membrane, okay? Really, really, really straightforward there. Outer membrane. Let's label the arrow here. Also, I try to color code things as much as possible. So we can see I try to make pink outer membrane because pink is the outer membrane. And now notice this membrane, this is not the only membrane. If we look inside, there's this other membrane which is folding a lot. We call this membrane here, guess what? It's more inner than the outer membrane, so we call it, guess what? The inner membrane, because it's more inner. Okay, let's put it here. Let me move things. Now, what next? What do we call this space in between the outer and the inner membrane? We call it the inter, because it's in between. It's inter the two membranes, in between. Okay, so we call it the intermembrane space. Again, all of these structures are really important, but in this video, I'm only listing what they are. In the next video, when we actually talk about cell respiration, which is the process of making ATP, then we'll make sure, then you will see why we care about all these structures and why they matter, okay? So now one other key structure here is Cristae. What the hell is this? So remember how we saw that the outer membrane is pretty smooth. There's no folds in it. It's just nice and smooth. But this inner membrane has a lot of folds, right? They go and it's, oh, fold in, fold in, fold in. So we call these folds Cristae or Crista, okay? So we can put an A or an AE, okay? Either way is fine. So let me label this. Now, let me ask you a question. If you had to walk all the way on this outer membrane, let's pretend you could, which would take you longer? To walk all around the outer membrane from this spot all the way around back to this spot, or would it take you longer to walk on the inner membrane all along the membrane to get back to the same spot? Of course it should be the inner membrane, right? Because the inner membrane has all of these folds, making it actually much longer than the outer membrane. Because at first you think, oh, it's more inner, so it's going to be easier to walk around. But no, it has so many folds, making its surface area so much larger. So you will actually take a much longer time to walk all the way along the inner membrane, right? So this is important. This is a key thing you need to understand, because cell respiration happens on this inner membrane, a key part of it. One of the key steps happens here on the inner membrane. And this step, it makes all the ATP. It's the last step, okay? And we're going to talk about that in the next video. But these cristae matter a lot. If these cristae weren't there, then cell respiration would happen much less efficiently. Why? Because imagine if this inner membrane was smooth all the way around, it didn't fold. Then there's so much less membrane space for this last step to happen. But now that it's folding so much, all of these cristae form, now there's so much more membrane, so much more road, kind of, right? So much longer of a membrane for cell respiration to happen on. There's so much more space, right? There's so much more of a surface area. So the fact that this inner membrane folds makes making energy far more efficient, okay? So these cristae are really, really important. Now, notice this blue kind of liquidy thing inside this container here, inside this inner membrane, right? This is called the matrix. And again, the matrix is where another important part of cell respiration happens, okay? Again, we're not going to focus on that in this video. Now, the last part here we need to care about is these ribosomes, okay? These little circle-like structures, these are ribosomes. Notice, remember, if we look at our original cell, there are already ribosomes in the cytoplasm. So we're saying now that there's also ribosomes inside the mitochondria. These ribosomes inside the mitochondria are slightly different. They are 70S ribosomes, whereas the ones in the cell cytoplasm is 80S, so they are slightly different. Notice also how there is DNA. This is DNA. There's also DNA in the mitochondria. So the mitochondria has its own DNA and its own ribosomes. It doesn't need the DNA from the cell itself or the ribosomes from the cell itself. So it can make its own proteins and make its own things happen by itself, okay? So that's important as well. Now, what's one final thing I want to say? So cell respiration, which we'll talk about in the next video, doesn't only use the mitochondria. There are various steps to the cell respiration, various steps to making ATP. One of the steps, the first step, happens in the cytoplasm. So the first step doesn't even need the mitochondria. But the second and so on, third steps, will need the mitochondria. So cell respiration depends both on the cytoplasm and the mitochondria, okay, to make energy efficiently. But that's for the next video. Just make sure in this video you memorize all these structures, and you don't even need to know what they're for because that's the purpose of the next video.